Everybody's got a right to learn. Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to do. Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to live. Every voice can't pay bills. We'll all go down to jail. Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to live.
good. I won't say hug your neighbor, but just look at somebody. Just look at somebody. Let your eyes smile at somebody. Now, I don't know about you, but I work with this crew that starts early in the morning. And somewhere around 7 o'clock, I started hearing ding, 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 ding on my phone. And it didn't give me any choice. Whether I wanted to or not, I had to wake up with my mind stayed on justice. I had to do that. All right? So how many of you woke up this morning with this on your mind? So I'm going to hear you sing it with me, right? Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on justice. Hold on. That's all right. That's all right. We can start again. You can always begin again.
That's right. That's right. Come on.
All right. We woke up this morning with our mind stayed on freedom. How about that? Woke up this morning with my mind, it was stayed on freedom. You know I woke up this morning with my mind, it was stayed on freedom. I said I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, 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 yeah. I got up this morning with my mind know that when we lift from the bottom, everybody rises? When we lift from the bottom, everybody rises. See, they think that we're coming to be liberated, but we're coming to liberate them for the ways that they oppress us. Give it up for Jamel.
We're going to take you there.
Yes.
It's coming.
We have come to liberate you from all the ways you hold us down, yeah. When you hurt me, you hurt you too. When you free me, you free yourself. When you lift from the bottom, everybody rises, yeah, yeah. When you live from the bottom, everybody rises, we have come to liberate you from all the ways you hold us down. Now you see, when you hurt me, you hurt you too.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yes. Woo.
When you free me, you free yourself. David hit me with the note. When you lift from the bottom, everybody rises.
Yay. Woo.
When you lift from the bottom, everybody rises. Y'all sing it one time.
Yes.
You got it? Figured it out.
Hey. Hey. Hey.
From the bottom, no, 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 no. We have come to liberate you from all the ways you hold us down. See, when you hurt me, you hurt you too. When you free me, you free yourself. Listen. When you lift from the bottom, everybody rises.
Everybody rises.
When you lift from the bottom,
Lift from the bottom.
everybody rises. Listen. We need air that we can breathe.
We need air as we can breathe.
We need water we can drink.
We need
water.
we can drink.
Now you might say that we are weak.
You might say that we are weak.
But we are stronger than you think. When you lift from the bottom, everybody rises. When you lift from the bottom,
Lift from the bottom.
everybody rises.
Everybody rises.
Keep on rising.
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 I said keep on rising.
Keep on rising.
Keep on rising.
Keep on
I
rising.
said keep on rising.
Keep on
I
rising.
said keep on rising. Keep on rising. Let me hear you. from the bottom, everybody rises. When you lift from the bottom, everybody rises. When
You know, if you hold on, you've been working, even through the pandemic, we've been working. We've been doing the best we could do, right? Doing the best we could do with what we have. But I'm here to tell you, I promise you, that if you hold on just a little while longer, I know justice is coming soon. Come on, pump your fist if you know justice is coming soon. It's Katina Rosemont.
Hold on just a little while longer.
Yeah.
Hold on just a little while is coming soon. Help me sing it. Hold on, just a little while longer. Hold on, just a little while longer. Hold on, just a little while longer. I know justice is coming.
said so much. I believe that with everything I have in me. Come on, crank up that round, that last part. Come on, come on, come on.
I know justice is coming.
Do you believe it? Do you believe it?
I know justice is coming soon. I know justice is coming.
I know you got your mask on, but behind that singing.
I know justice is coming.
Here we go, last time.
I know justice is coming
All right, y'all. This is our last song. All right? Now, for this one, you might just have to spread apart just a little bit because we want you to take your mask down just to sing this verse, just to sing the response back to us. And the song is, "We don't want war. We want justice. Justice will bring about peace. We want to live in a world without fear. Hear us, war cease, war cease." We just want you to know what we're saying. Tell me why people are dying at the hands of police. Why can't we live in a world without fear? Hear us, war cease, war cease. Come on, y'all, let's get real hyped on this one.
Woo, woo, woo.
Now, when we call, we want you to respond. Here we go.
We don't want war, we want justice. Justice will bring about peace. We want to live in a world without fear. Hear us, war cease, war cease. Oh, 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 Why people are dying at the hands of police. Why can't we live in a world without fear? Hear us, war cease, war cease.
Come on and respond.
Oh, oh, oh,
Those signs in the air. Come on, band, give it to me one more time.
Oh.
Somebody give a shout. Say forward together. Forward together. Forward together. We already have over 100,000 people checking us out. Give them a shout. We welcome you to the launch of the Mass Poor People's Low-Wage Assembly and Moral March on Washington, D.C., June 18, 2022. Today we start 365 days of mobilization to change this nation. And because we are Moral Monday, because we are the Poor People's Campaign, and I greet you on behalf of also Reverend Dr. Leah Steele Harris. Check out the screen. Part of us, this is virtual, part of it is live, but first thing we always do is a roll call from the stage. And before the band goes off the stage, give them a big hand. Come on, give them a big scream. Miss Yara Allen, the Street Genie Freddie Green, and all of the accompaniment. Check out your screens.
In 2018, there were 140 million Americans who were poor or one emergency away from economic ruin.
Across the country, in communities and forgotten places, poor people and low-wage workers of different races, genders, abilities, sexualities, and faiths are building a moral fusion movement.
We are coming together across all the lines that divide us to restructure and lift our society from the bottom up.
We delivered our demands.
We demand.
We demand.
We demand.
We demand.
Reinvestment in and the expansion of public housing, ensuring that all have a decent house to live in and a place to call home.
We engaged in nonviolent civil disobedience.
To follow that breaking news in Albany, where a large group of protesters have moved back into the street.
Today's Poor People's Campaign rally, part of simultaneous rallies in more than 30 states and Washington, D.C.
Over the past 5 weeks, nearly 2,000 people have been arrested in what organizers describe as the most expansive wave of nonviolent direct action this century.
Our backs are against the wall, and we got no choice but to push.
Because it's crucial that we make ourselves heard.
For a country this rich to have so many people poor, it's immoral and it's wrong.
We testified on Capitol Hill.
Never before have impacted leaders gotten to march into Congress and present a budget.
We brought a full budget request and a movement behind it.
During the pandemic, we organized the largest social media gathering of the poor in U.S. history.
We mobilized, we organized, we registered, and we educated poor voters across the country.
And we helped bring poverty to the national agenda.
Something that hasn't come up very much tonight, but deserves a lot of attention: poverty. You know, the Poor People's Campaign is marching on Iowa right now, calling on us to talk about this issue more.
Ending poverty will not just be an aspiration. It will be a theory of change to build a new economy that includes everyone.
Our country now stands at a tipping point. We can realize a third Reconstruction to fully address poverty and low wages from the bottom up.
Today we say to poor people, Mr. Speaker, we see you and we will eradicate poverty in our country with you.
No democracy can claim to be strong when 140 million people, or 43% of its people, are poor and low wealth.
Now, we're organizing to realize a third Reconstruction. It's time to fully address poverty and low wages from the bottom up. We are fighting forward together
and not one step back.
I want you to know that when hands that once picked cotton join hands of Latinos, join hands of progressive whites, join faith hands and labor hands and Asian hands and Native American hands and poor hands and wealthy hands with a conscience and gay hands and straight hands and trans hands and Christian hands and Jewish hands and Muslim hands and Hindu hands and Buddhist hands. When we all get together, We are an instrument of redemption. When we join hands, we can revive and make sure that the promise of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness and equal protection under the law is never taken away from anybody. So I got a question. Are the rejected ready to revive and declare that this land is your land, this land is my land, this land is our land, and together from the State House to the White House, the rejected are going to demand that this nation never give up on being one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to everyone here in Halifax Hall, here in Raleigh. Welcome to all the people joining online, across the country, across the world, to this powerful uprising. This mass poor people's and low-wage workers assembly, where we're launching 365 days of fighting forward. Forward together, not one step back. We are here because people, poor people, low-wage workers, unpaid care workers, sub-minimum wage workers, homeless families, welfare rights leaders, healthcare workers who can't even afford healthcare. Because family farmers, teachers, veterans, folks that have lost so much in COVID, and to the pandemics of racism and poverty that preceded. All kinds of beautiful, powerful people are rising up. We're rising up to demonstrate the compelling power that we, the 140 million poor and low-income people in this, the richest country in the world, have. The power that we have to reconstruct society from the bottom up. And we're here to commit to fighting forward for these 365 days. And until everyone is fed, until everyone has decent housing, until everyone is paid living wages and are able to enjoy the fruits of our labor, until Black lives matter, Indigenous lives matter, until we can end countless wars, until we ensure clean water and clean land and clean air for absolutely everyone. Yes. We are committed to fighting forward for a moral march on Washington. We know that when forces of regression, forces that want to deny people the right to vote, forces that blame the poor for poverty rather than a poverty-producing system, forces that pay lip service to addressing injustice but refuse to raise wages or expand health care, or who decide to compromise with people's lives and the infrastructure of our communities. When such forces of regression sow violence and inequality and division, moral movements led by those most directly impacted by injustice, banding together with people from all walks of life, these movements arise. They build a better world. They make a difference. And I'm here to let you know that we are making a difference. Yes. People are organizing in more than 45 states across this country. Hundreds of partner organizations are joining forces together. Thousands of faith leaders from dozens of different faith traditions are making a clarion call for justice. This movement is putting pressure, it's persisting, and because of this, poverty is on the national agenda for the first time in over a generation. Yes. Because poor people and moral leaders and clergy and activists and organizers and advocates are mobilizing and organizing and educating and registering people for a movement that votes, a fusion movement is growing. It's gaining strength. And we're here. And we're organized. Congressional leaders have introduced a resolution in the House of Representatives calling for a third Reconstruction, fully addressing poverty and low wages from the bottom up. Inspired by this Poor People's Campaign, inspired by the commitment and the clarity and the capacity and the connection of poor and low-wealth people leading this movement, committed to building and deepening the resolve this nation needs to become a more perfect union. This movement is made up of moms whose water has been turned off, whose children are being taken away, who cry out, "Take away our poverty, not our children." This movement is made of families who have lost children to the lack of health care, who have wailed that their children are no more, but are committed to fighting until all have the right to live. It's made up of grandparents in Cancer Alley, Louisiana, family farmers in Kansas, border communities in Texas, police brutality activists in St. Louis who are crying out, everybody's got a right to live. Yes. Everybody's got a right to live. Yes. And before this campaign fails, yes, we'll all go down to jail. Yes. Because everybody's got a right to live. Yes. Poverty will not always be with us. Racism and violence and division is not inevitable. We can save the earth. We can end the militarization of our communities and the world. We can reject the false narratives of Christian nationalism, of white supremacy. Because this movement, this Poor People's Campaign, is moving forward together, not one step back. Forward together. Not one step back. Forward together. Not one step back.
Amen. Thank you, Dr. Liz, and thank you, Bishop Barbara, who will close us out tonight in a powerful way. Those of you here in Raleigh and those of you online all over the country, you don't want to miss a moment. Stay with us tonight. I greet you tonight in the name of the 140 million poor and low-wealth people and low-wage workers in this country. We stand in the name of those tonight who struggle to make ends meet in the wealthiest nation in the world, denied a living wage, called essential workers, but are denied the essentials to do their work. We stand tonight in the name of those who've been denied health care, denied voting rights, denied civil rights, denied human rights, denied clean air and clean water, denied the rights of this democracy. We stand tonight in their names on our way for the next, fighting forward for the next 365 days to June 18, 2022. June 18, 2022, fighting forward. People have asked, why do you protest? Why do you march? Why do you raise your voices? Why do you keep showing up in places like this? Why the Poor People's Campaign? Why the Third Reconstruction? Well, I tell you why. You ask such good questions. We are here because we know none of us are free until all of us are free. We are here because we know that there is no scarcity in this land. The only scarcity is the moral will to do what's right. We're here because we know that when you lift from the bottom, everybody rises. We're here because we know everybody has a right to live. And before this campaign fails, we'll all go down to jail. And so I greet you tonight, and I say to you tonight, my sisters and brothers, forward together. Forward together. Forward together.
We raise our voices with love and lament, praise and protest, truth-telling and prophetic witness. We boldly declare, in the face of systemic racism, poverty, ecological devastation, a war-based economy, and a distorted moral narrative of religious nationalism, that silence is betrayal. Somebody's hurting our family, and it's gone on for too long.
And we won't be silent anymore.
We come with many names for the holy: God, Allah, Great Spirit, Brahma, and those too sacred to voice. We are called by different teachers: Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, Moses. We affirm the voice of each human endowed with rights and recognition. Somebody's hurting our family, and it's gone on far too long.
And we won't be silent anymore.
Racism is the virus that tears at our humanity, infects our systems, and festers within the great democratic experiment that is America. We remember the 700 people who died each day from poverty in this country before COVID. We pray that we would find a new way, creating an economy of interdependence. Somebody's hurting our family, and it's gone on far too long, and we won't be silent anymore.
As we cut at earth, we hurt the spirit of river, soil, mountain, and tree. There is enough for everyone to live free, but there is not enough for corporate greed. We pray with our policy demands, with solidarity strikes, with movements for farmers, for public health workers, for indigenous struggle, for sacred land, for mothers fighting for water. Somebody's hurting our family, and it's gone on far too long.
And we won't be silent anymore.
We lament a nation addicted to war, economically dependent on violence, foreign and domestic. We can never address the suffering of God's people if we spend over half of our national budget on the military, lining the pockets of corporations and sacrificing the lives of our young people. Let us study war no more. Somebody's been hurting our family, and it's gone on far too long.
And we won't be silent anymore.
With thanksgiving in our hearts, we remember those who laid the foundation and dreamed us to this moment and this movement. For Sojourner Truth, Frederick Douglass, John Brown, Harriet Tubman, Lucretia Mott, Sitting Bull, for A. Philip Randolph, Fannie Lou Hamer, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Ella Baker, Dorothy Day, Abraham Heschel, Sefer Chavez, Bayard Rustin, Polly Murray, for the elders still with us, for the children birthed in this movement now. We pray, Holy One, and ones of infinite name and reach. Thank you for the courage of our people in the streets today. Lift up brave leaders to organize in our communities. And we, like the ones before, are now the ones we've been waiting for. Listen, somebody has been wounding and hurting our children, and we won't be silent anymore.
Let's give it up for our moral leaders. We have Reverend Jimmy Hawkins, Rabbi Judy Schindler, Pastor Shalice Overy, Reverend Hershey Millette Stevens, and Reverend Dr. James A. Forbes, Sr.
Poor People's Campaign, National Call for More Revival. Let me hear you make some noise. Oh, come on, we got to do better than that. We coming here today in person and all across the country.
Right.
Come on, via social media, make some noise.
Come on.
Woo! That's right, that's right. And while we are here coming together in person, I got one thing I want to ask. We want to make sure that we remember this date. So, everybody pull out your phones, pull out your phones. We need everybody pull out your phones. What we getting ready to do is, you're going to tap your neighbor, give him one of them church elbows, say, neighbor, I'm glad to see you.
I'm glad to see you.
Let's take a picture.
Let's take a picture.
Say, neighbor,
Neighbor,
I'm glad to see you.
I'm glad to see you.
Let's take a picture. Kaz, let's take a picture. Now, if you took that picture, make some noise, North Carolina. Poor People's Campaign, all across the country. Make sure that you all post that on social media. It's thousands of us viewing together right now in this space. So one more time, make some noise for yourselves. Poor People's Campaign. Now we're getting ready to transition to voting rights. So let us welcome our ancestor, Rosanelle Eaton, with the video, followed by her daughter, Miss Arminta Eden. Come on, make some noise.
When they announced something about some fraud, I said, why they keep lying? Because I didn't plan to march. I want heels out on my shoes. You got to open up your mouth and be a committee of one. Say, we the people. 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 Say, stand up. Fired up. Stand up. Fired up. Thank you so much.
Oh, my friends, we are here today, back on this same mall, fighting the good fight for justice and freedom for all poor people in the United States and in this state. You sometimes wonder, why do we have to do this over and over again? We are wise enough to know that it's not Democrat versus Republican. It is right versus wrong. While our demands may seem to fall on deaf ears, we know that we must continue to press on and not get weary in well-doing on working for the distressed, depressed, and suppressed. My dearly departed mother, Rosanelle Eaton, which you just saw, never got tired of standing up for voting rights since the time she was 21 years old, when she had to recite the preamble to the Constitution of the United States of America in order to even register to vote. Every Moral Monday, my mother was out here with us on this mall, fighting for us, encouraging us, and even going to jail with us at the age of 92. She even went further. She sued Governor McCrory and the North Carolina Board of Elections to overturn the voter ID laws so that we may continue to vote freely. She stayed fed up and fired up until the very end. We are not fools. We know that these so-called voter integrity laws are not about voter integrity. We know that these laws are only designed to keep poor people, black people, and brown people from the polls to vote by cutting back early voting, cutting polling locations, cutting back hours for souls to the polls with special ID requirements, and even prohibiting us from giving a person a glass of water while they're standing in line to vote. It's shame on them. Even though they try to wear us down and crush our hope, we must remember that the victory is not given to the swift, nor to the strong, but those who endure to the end. Thank you.
And to continue to talk about saving our democracy and voting rights, from Jackson, Mississippi, we got Benny Ivy.
Hello, man. First and foremost, thank you guys for inviting me here. It's a pleasure, and it's an honor to be working beside such great people for such a great cause. I was raised between South Jackson and Rankin County, Mississippi all my life, dirt poor, raised by drug addicts and outlaws. I quit school and rode around with my uncle and my brother at age 15 so that we could break into houses and steal anything that wasn't tied down so that my family could smoke crack and do other hard drugs. I was a gang member at 15, looking for that security in my life that I didn't have at home. I was also a drug addict at 15 and a solid meth addict at age 16. I spent all my juvenile years in detention centers and training schools. I caught my first charge as an adult, aggravated assault and burglary charges, at 21, and I began a career in prison. From there, I was in and out of prison for the next 13 years, 11 of those years behind the walls of the Mississippi Department of Corrections. I never stood a chance at life. Not a chance. All my life, I lived the life that I was taught and conditioned to live. Just like so many other people, you never know what's going on in somebody's life. You never know what's going on behind closed doors, right? But after serving my time and transforming my mind and transforming my life, my voice still doesn't count. My voice still don't count because I cannot vote. I've been out of prison now for more than a decade. I've been clean off meth more than a decade. I've been out of the gangs more than a decade, and I still can't vote. I've accomplished many goals, including I'm a successful business owner here in Mississippi. I'm a prominent church member of my church. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a homeowner. I'm co-director of a Credible Messenger program here in the juvenile youth courts and in the communities in which we mentor young people to keep them from going down the same roads that I went down, and I still can't vote. So my question is this: what more do I need to do to prove that my voice is just as valuable as anyone else's? What more do I need to do to prove myself to the powers that be that my voice is important? My voice is valuable, and I should be able to express myself in the voting polls as well as anywhere else. God bless y'all. God bless this movement. Thank y'all for having me on here tonight.
All right.
Thank you so much, Benny. We know that voting suppression affects everybody.
That's right.
Not black, not brown, everybody.
Yes, right.
And we are not going to stand for it. So the next we're going to hear about voting rights and the champions of it. Let's hear this video.
In studying the history of the massive resistance to Brown versus Board of Education in the 1950s, I happened on the trail that led to the current attacks on our democracy. And in fact, what I discovered was a deliberate, very calculated, very cold-eyed, clear strategy to shackle our democracy. So all that we are seeing now, all that's happening across the states, is not simply the result of Donald Trump. And I know many of you know this because you know the racism on which it all depends goes way, way back in our country. But the actual strategy of rigging the rules really started coming together in the late 1990s. And then they kind of hit the ground running, particularly after the election of President Obama. But even before that, they were laying the groundwork. So it's absolutely critical that mobilizations like this take place and that we push as hard as we can to end the Jim Crow filibuster and to free democracy from these shackles so that we can do all the wonderful and important things the vast majority supports and has wanted to see done for so long.
So after the inauguration of the new presidency in the United States, we have seen more than 389 restrictive bills introduced in 48 states in the 2021 legislative session. 14 states have now passed 22 bills targeting voter access, and that's just the beginning. We are in the middle of this fight, state by state, including here in North Carolina. At the same time, we're also seeing democracy suppression bills targeting election workers, election certification processes. So far, we have seen 216 bills across the country introduced that would allow state legislatures to politicize, criminalize, or interfere with elections. This is the fight that the federal government has to take up alongside the people who state by state are standing up and saying, not in our name, we have a voice and we want our voice to be heard.
And the truth is that, one, we not only are we sort of witnessing a civil war amongst one of the major parties in our country, but in fact, some have argued that it's descended into essentially the Republican crime syndicate. And that in the marketplace of ideas, fewer and fewer people are buying what they're selling. And the only way for them to continue to hold on to power is if they cheat. It is absolutely clear to me that if you are a climate activist or voter or donor, if you are an education activist, voter or donor, police reform, reproductive justice, that all of those things are important and we all need your energy, your passion, your organizing around those issues. And none of it matters if we are not able to protect and preserve the right to vote. And so no one ever said that it was going to be easy. No one ever said that our march towards a multiracial, multi-ethnic, multilingual, multi-generational sort of plurality, majority, was going to be easy and that white supremacy was going to die quietly.
But one thing I think we don't pay enough attention to, this political right is deathly afraid of the new generation because they understand that this is the most diverse generation. It's a generation that knows the economy is not working for the vast majority. As a friend of mine says, this is the generation we've been waiting for, right? They are incredible.
I am optimistic. I am optimistic about what is ahead. And I'm optimistic because I see what we have just been through and that the frontline communities all across this country who have historically felt the burdens of racial discrimination, inequities in our economic system, the climate change crisis, and other historic inequalities have been standing up and saying, we are not just moving to participate in our elections in historic numbers. We are moving from being governed to governing. This is a transformative moment in our country's history. And we believe that if we invest in our democracy now, we can create a country that will lift up to meet the promise of past generations that have laid so much on the line for us to be able to be here and be free with one another speaking these words today.
Let's look to the video.
And Barbara, we've been together to commemorate tragedies, as we were in Tulsa. We've been together to celebrate victories, but I don't think we've ever been together at a time of such opportunity to deliver dignity for our nation's poor and low-wage workers, and make ending poverty not just an aspiration, but a theory of change. And I want to thank everyone for joining this assembly, for reminding us that we all created an image of God. We all have the right to economic opportunity, to health care, to clean air, water, and the right to vote. With our advocacy, we're translating our shared prayers into policy and building our economy from the bottom up and the middle out. You know, through the American Rescue Plan, we've cut hunger by a quarter, and we're on track to cutting child poverty in half. We know it's not enough just to build back from this pandemic, the devastation it's caused for the most vulnerable among us. We have to build back better than before, with millions of jobs that deliver dignity, a $15 minimum wage, affordable housing, universal pre-K, tuition-free community college. We need to build worker power through organization and collective bargaining, and heed the cry for racial justice some 400 years in the making. Rev, at my inaugural prayer service, you reminded us that only by being, quote, repairers of the breach can we bring revival. Vice President Harris and I will keep working with you and your Poor People's Campaign to answer that clarion moral call. God bless you all and your urgent work.
All right. We're going to continue hearing from those impacted. We're going to now hear from Alicia Cool, coming from Santa Cruz Homeless Union. Alicia?
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me. On behalf of the National Union of the Homeless, my family and I live in an RV in a city where an all-out war has been declared on the unhoused. We are those with sub-minimum wage jobs who can't afford sky-high rents, those with disabilities, those who have been turned out of their homes because they are gay or the victims of domestic violence, those who will soon be on the street when the eviction moratoriums come to an end. When COVID-19 hit, the Homeless Union organized Project Survival, bringing food, medical care, and life-saving essentials to the people. We went to court and got federal injunctions to stop police from breaking up hundreds of encampments. We showed that we're homeless, not helpless.
That's right.
Homelessness is just the most visible expression of the deepening poverty and affordable housing crisis millions of Americans are facing. Whether they are doubled up with other families, herded into shelters, squatted in boarded up buildings, or paying outrageous fees in weekly rate motels. Our union fights for day-to-day survival, but we are about ending homelessness. So we join you in fighting for a new third Reconstruction in America, for an America where no one has to go without the basic necessities of life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alicia. The next voices you're going to hear is from Reverend Latia Frazier, Tammy Rojas, and Dr. Viviana Martinez Bianchi. Reverend Frazier.
People with disabilities or pre-existing conditions often get left out of healthcare plans, civil rights legislation, employment, and housing. We are often left out of sight and off of people's minds. The truth is, people with disabilities are the fastest growing minority group, and because of COVID-related health complications, many more people are and will become a part of the disability community. We live in a society where people with disabilities are made poor and are often on the fringes of society. In the Christian tradition, Jesus had a lot to say about that. People with disabilities are not the problem that needs healing, but but it is the society that shuts people with disabilities out from being full participants in all aspects of society and therefore are made poor and dispossessed that needs restructuring. The Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, is calling for a third Reconstruction because when you lift people with disabilities up, everybody rises. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Fraser. Tammy.
Hello, my name is Tammy Rojas. I'm a coordinator with Put People First PA and the National Union of the Homeless. I live in Lancaster, a rural county in Pennsylvania. I have been poor and held low-wage jobs and never had decent health care for the majority of my life. I contracted COVID-19 at the end of January. My Penn Medicine doctor gave me the runaround about getting a COVID-19 test, so I had to get a test through other means. And I've had to fight Penn Medicine for the health care treatment I've needed ever since. I'm still dealing with lingering effects since contracting the virus. My lung capacity has changed, and I still have moments of extreme fatigue and COVID fog brain. During this pandemic, Lancaster County decided to spend resources on building a new prison instead of saving a hospital from closure. That's how wrong our priorities are, not just in my county, but at every level of our government. We have made some progress in changing the national conversation on poverty, but we have to realize that we cannot end poverty without enacting universal health care. Health care is a human right that must be guaranteed to everyone. Millions more of us are facing serious health conditions because we contracted the COVID-19 virus. Congress must make enacting universal health care a priority. Thank you.
Just before the next video, the speaker, I wasn't going to say much right now, but I want everybody to raise your hand that wants the nation to hear us. Now I got to ask you a tough question, but it's a movement question. How do we expect them to hear us if we're not listening to each other? If we're talking and on our cell phones and having conversations? You see, this is not a picnic. This is serious business. So I need everybody, if you're with us, unless you're the choir or on the stage and you're in the back behind the TV screens, to go in front of the TV screen. And if you need to get in the shade, that's fine. But millions of people are tuned in now, and if they see you slapping high fives, not when somebody's done something good and just jibber-jabbing, then that will make them think we're not serious. So even if you're in the shade, because if we can't pay attention to our own people for 2.5 hours, how are we going to expect this nation that needs to be reconstructed to listen to us? If I'm right about it, raise your hand. If you ain't mad with nobody but the devil, raise your hand. Now check your neighbor and say, neighbor, we can't make them listen.
We can't make them listen
if we don't listen.
If we don't.
So listen up. We need full attention. For 2.5. Can't you have full attention for 2.5 hours?
That's right.
Now let's give our next speaker a big hand. Come on. Give me a little music. Give me a music applause. Give me a music applause. Bring on every speaker like that. I know it's hot, but folk that's living in the street are hotter than this. People without health care are hotter than this. People without living wages are hotter than this. And I'd rather be hot. In fact, the truth of the matter is, I'd rather die in the street than to live and not be fighting for justice. So let's be one people today, all right?
In the United States today, many people bear a disproportionate burden of disease.
One moment, Doctor. Center mic, please. Center mic. Try it again.
In the United States today, many people bear a disproportionate burden of disease, premature death, and higher rates of pain and suffering. Black men are 70% more likely to die from a stroke as compared to non-Hispanic white men. Black mothers have 3 times higher maternal mortality than white mothers. Out of every 1,000 live births, we will lose 11 black babies, twice as many as white babies. Hispanics have a 50% higher death rate from diabetes and are more likely to be without health insurance. The rate of infant mortality for indigenous Americas is 60% higher than those for white kids. People of color have had higher rates of infection, hospitalization, and death due to COVID-19, yet they are less likely than white people to have received a COVID-19 vaccine. Rural Americans, farm workers,
environment, the fight for civil rights, and the fight against poverty. He stated that each one of us had an equal stake in the fight for our planet and for environmental justice, because if we did not save the environment, we did not save the earth, then whatever we hope to do in civil rights or in a war against poverty would be of no consequence, because we would all have the equality of extinction and the brotherhood of the grave. We sit here over 50 years since he uttered those words. We sit here over 50 years since the first Earth Day, where people gathered in mass to elevate a commitment to our planet and to people. We sit here 39 years since activists and community leaders pushed the environmental movement by birthing an environmental justice movement right here in North Carolina. We sit here, the beneficiaries of a legacy of individuals who have always understood that this fight for people and for planet is interconnected.
That's right.
We sit here a remnant of their struggle, but also with our eye on a different timeline. We sit here where a global climate crisis looms, threatening to disrupt and displace our very existence, especially the most marginalized amongst us. We sit here where a UN IPCC report has stated we have 9 years to take critical action to limit climate catastrophe. We sit here where, despite the continued evidence of ecological devastation, of global climate disruption, despite knowledge of how this impacts the most marginalized communities amongst us, there are still forces in denial, some right here in North Carolina, that would try to slow walk our transition to a clean economy and a just future for us all. We sit here. We sit here where, despite and recognize that if we are to honor the legacy of those like James Farmer Jr., like Dr. King, like those of us here, that we can't just sit here. That if we truly care about our people, if we truly care about our planet, if we truly care about our future, that each of us has a stake to work to deconstruct these ills and reconstruct justice. We can't just sit here. We must work forward together.
Not one step back.
Come on, put your hands together. I said, Poor People's Campaign, put your hands together. That's right, that's right. We're getting ready to transition into the next section, and I need everybody to say equal protection.
Equal protection.
Oh, we got to get louder than that, Poor People's Campaign. Say equal protection under the law. Say equal protection under the law. Now we're getting ready. We're getting ready to hear about policing and mass incarceration, veteran, immigrant rights, and ASL accessibility. We'll be hearing from Dante Sharp, Jose Vaz.
That destroys our air, steals people's land, misusing eminent domain, and in Memphis, their crude oil pipeline could poison over 1 million people's drinking water due to our precious Memphis sand aquifer beneath our feet, which supplies all of our water. What we know is this: God is on our side, because God is on the side of the oppressed, and it is that spirit that is within us. It's that spirit that will not bow. That spirit will not be broken. That spirit will not bend, and it is that spirit that will see us through to victory. as we fight these interlocking injustices together in Memphis and in Raleigh and Washington, D.C. and around this country. See, God bless you. And what we know to be true is that we're going to go forward together and not one step back.
All right, Memphis in the house. How many of y'all are impressed that we're able to do Zoom Live? Because I am. We've learned a lot of things over the last year. And we've also forgotten some things, like how to shake each other's hands and to interact socially in not an awkward way. But today is not just it's not socially awkward, it's a socially distant rally. And we know that this is, folks are just starting to come back out. And how many of y'all are excited to be out here today? How many of y'all have seen someone you haven't seen in a year today? How many of y'all remember that this is not nearly as hot as some of the Moral Mondays in summers past? So we want you to stay out here. We need you to drink water, but we know it's hot. And so we are going to skip some videos that we have that we're going to push out later, but from economists and from religious leaders and folks, so that we can really get to the meat of the program and the live people as well. So the rest of what you're going to see is going to be live. And it's from either Zoom or here, but it's the same thing because we're online as well. We have thousands, tens, hundreds of thousands by the end of the night who will be on, and then we'll have a rebroadcast with the full program this weekend. How does that sound? Y'all get your water. All right, stay with it. And now we're going to have, I think you already said so, but Dante Sharp joining us on Zoom.
Everybody. I did 26 years for murder I didn't commit. I was exonerated. And since I've been home, I've been fighting for justice to bring about change. And I found out that we have an immoral system run by immoral people. And immoral people make up an immoral system. So our fight is to get the immoral people out of office, to get them out of power. We must use our power to vote and get them out of office. The system I've seen is it oppresses the poor people, people of color. And it's systemic racism, and is the cause of mass incarceration. And to me, mass incarceration is modern day slavery. So if you want to do anything and be a part of the fight, we have to start where we are in our neighborhoods, our cities, and get behind those organizations to bring about change and to get those people out of office by voting. So whatever you do, do what you can. First, get out and vote. Thank you.
Jose?
How you doing, Poor People's Campaign? Y'all sound fired up today.
All right.
My name is Jose Vasquez, and I'm a disabled Army veteran. I'm here representing over 250,000 members of Common Defense. We are the nation's largest progressive veterans organization. We joined the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, because we are sick and tired of the war economy. While hardworking Americans are struggling to make ends meet, defense contractors are lobbying members of Congress to spend billions and billions of dollars on weapons of mass destruction.
Shame.
More than 60% of our federal discretionary dollars, taxes that come out of our pockets, are allocated toward war making.
Shame.
Think about that. There are 60 cents of every dollar that Congress approves from year to year goes straight into the pockets of corporations and into their accounts to profit from war.
Shame.
Why the hell do we have to fight for $15 when the CEOs and the contractors are making millions of dollars every year?
That's right. Say that.
Why are working people have to file for bankruptcy because of medical debt in the middle of a global pandemic? While these CEOs are making a killing, we have corrupt politicians trying to stop veterans from accessing the ballot box. Why can't a veteran, a disabled veteran with post-traumatic stress disorder, mail in their ballot early? Haven't they sacrificed their physical and mental health defending this democracy? Veterans across this nation say enough is enough. We won't stand by while we spend more on forever wars that benefit the wealthy. We will fight to protect and defend our people. We demand Congress take action to meet the needs of low-income Americans. We can't pat essential workers on the back on one day and then cut their health care the next day. We can't say that everyone counts and then try to create barriers for voting rights.
That's right. That's right.
The same rights that veterans have sacrificed to preserve. So we will be on the front line with all of you because we know this. You only get what you're organized to take, and we're here to take what's ours. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Carmen Rodriguez.
Hi everyone, my name is Ileana Santillan.
Forward together! Forward together! Los inmigrantes estamos aquí para quedarnos.
Immigrants are here to stay.
Mi nombre es Carmen Rodríguez.
My name is Carmen Rodriguez.
Soy madre.
I am a mother.
Soy inmigrante.
I'm an immigrant.
Soy uno de los más de 11 millones de personas que estamos construyendo América.
One of the 11 million persons who are constructing America.
Y a pesar de todo, seguimos siendo ignorados por el gobierno.
And even then, we're continuing to be ignored by the government.
Soy indocumentada.
I am undocumented.
Y tengo un sueño.
And I have a dream.
Sueño con el día que nuestras familias no tengan temor de ser separadas por ICE.
I dream of a day where our families do not have to live in fear of being separated by ICE.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Sueño con el día que nuestra comunidad sea reconocida.
I dream of a day where my community is recognized
por su gran aporte económico,
for all the economic benefits.
Seamos libres de emprender sueños.
A day where we will be free to reach our dreams.
Que hoy se nos dificultan por no tener un estatus migratorio.
Those dreams that are difficult to achieve because we do not have an immigrant status.
Ni siquiera tenemos el acceso a una licencia de conducir.
We don't even have access to a driver's license.
Esto es injusto.
This is unjust.
Hemos pasado por varias administraciones.
We've been through several administrations.
Miles de familias destrozadas a causa de la separación.
Many families have suffered because of the separation of families.
Administraciones que se han dedicado a amenazar, a atormentar a nuestra comunidad.
Administrations who have made it a goal to threaten and disregard our communities.
Y otras más dándonos falsas esperanzas.
And many others giving us false hope.
Esto no puede continuar.
We cannot continue like this.
Nuestra comunidad vive situaciones de pobreza.
Our community is living in poverty.
A causa del salario bajo.
Because we don't have an equitable salary.
Y tantas situaciones de racismo y discriminación.
And all the discrimination and racism we have to endure.
Y el miedo por no tener un estatus migratorio nos obliga a permanecer callados.
And the fear of not having an immigrant status makes us stay silent.
Es momento de que nuestras voces sean escuchadas.
It is time that our voices are heard.
That's right, yeah.
Los políticos tienen que reconocer.
Politicians must recognize.
Y tomar acción y parar los ataques hacia nuestra comunidad a nivel nacional y estatal.
They need to cease their attacks on a national level and a local level.
Basta de propuestas antiinmigrantes como la HB 101.
We need to stop anti-immigrant legislation like HB 101.
La cual es un ataque directo para nuestras familias.
One that's a direct attack to our families.
Para nuestra tranquilidad y para nuestros hijos.
For our tranquility and our children.
El día de hoy seguimos en pandemia.
To this day, we're still under a pandemic.
En donde la comunidad indocumentada no tuvimos opción de quedarnos en casa.
where the undocumented community didn't have an option to stay home.
Las construcciones siguieron.
Construction kept on going.
La limpieza siguió.
Cleaning services continued.
Los alimentos siguieron llegando.
Food was still at your table.
Cosechadas por manos de inmigrantes.
We're benefiting from the labor of immigrants.
El llamado es para el presidente Biden.
This call is for President Biden.
Para todos los políticos federales.
To all federal politicians.
Para el gobernador Roy Cooper.
To Governor Roy Cooper.
Senadores, representantes y los políticos del estado.
Senators, representatives, and all politicians in the state.
Recuerden que estamos aquí, que somos millones.
Remember that we're here and there's millions of us.
Somos madres y padres y no somos invisibles.
We are parents, we are mothers, and we're not invincible.
Nuestros hijos comenzaron a votar.
Our children started voting.
La decisión es ahora de ellos.
Now it's their time to make the decisions.
Nos engañaron con DACA. Tenemos DACA hace 9 años y esa no es la solución.
They lied to us with DACA. We've had DACA for 9 years and that is not the solution.
Tenemos años, décadas esperando por una reforma migratoria.
We have been waiting for years, for decades, for an immigration reform.
Reforma migratoria para todos. Ahora es el momento.
Immigration reform for everyone. Now is the time.
Estamos conscientes que tenemos muchos muros que derrumbar y puentes que construir.
We're conscious that we have a lot of barriers to remove and bridges to build.
Estamos juntos en esto.
We are together in this.
Ningún ser humano es ilegal.
People are not illegal.
Reforma migratoria ahora.
Immigration reform now.
Las vidas negras importan.
Black lives matter.
Reconstruyamos esta gran nación.
Let's rebuild this great country.
Forward together. Forward together. Sí se puede. Thank you.
Next, we're going to hear live from Karina Baker.
Hello, my name is Karina Baker, and I have been part of the PPC for a year now through my internship at the Kairos Center. As a deaf person born to deaf parents, growing up, I saw my mom and dad get passed over for many jobs and struggle to make ends meet. In the jobs they did get, they were often placed in low-wage positions with limited opportunities for advancement. They would preach to me that as a deaf person, I had to work twice as hard to make it in the hearing world, and that college was the only path to success. So that's what I did. And once I got my bachelor's degree and got all the necessary qualifications, I submitted job applications, but it was challenging. Just applying for a job was still like being in the Hunger Games. In actuality, college degrees are not enough, especially for people with disabilities who face obstacle after obstacle. If we do indeed get the job, the hurdles don't end there, with communication barriers and lack of resources and support services. Not many workplaces are willing to accommodate people with varying abilities, even as we offer our unique perspectives and assets to the workplace. It's crazy to me that in 2021, it's still legal for workplaces to pay a sub-minimum wage to people with disabilities in certain settings. Many of us, disabled people and abled people alike, try to do everything that is expected of us, and yet struggle to make a living wage. The harsh reality is that our current system perpetuates many barriers that disproportionately target people of color, poor people, and people with disabilities, and sets the stage to exploit those that have fallen through the cracks. The American dream is a myth, but it doesn't need to be. We need the third Reconstruction to ensure that deaf people, people with disabilities, and all people can have the right to live and to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Karina. We're now going to hear from Roz Pellis, Senior Advisor to the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. Roz?
We are here this evening calling for a third Reconstruction, and we need to do that, and we need to do it with the loudest voices possible, the biggest actions possible. We need a third Reconstruction in this country. And when we talk about a third Reconstruction, we have to talk about the plight of workers in this country. Workers who have proven to be essential to the growth of our country. Workers who have proven to keep this country moving while the rest of us were just trying to hold on. So we got to talk about the conditions of workers. We got to talk about what's happening with workers and what we've got to do to change the circumstance so that people can make a decent and living wage. We got to have people making the wage that they deserve. And they got to have the conditions that they deserve, right? So what we're going to do is to now introduce some of the most important folks in this country. They are workers who are every day building this country, every day keeping us going. And we're going to start with Sister Kumi Davis, who's a Raise Up Fight for 15 worker. She's a home care worker. Let's bring her on with a round of applause. She is essential.
Well, hello there.
Hello.
So I am a certified nurse assistant at an assisted living group home. And I have a second job as a home care worker. Can I get an amen? Amen. And like so many, I go above and beyond the call of duty. Hello. And I do it all for less than $15 an hour. Did you hear what I said? I said less than $15 an hour. I get no health care benefits. And on top of that, I get no 401k, no sick pay, no chance to join a union, and I haven't taken a vacation day in 5 years. I said I haven't taken a vacation day in 5 years. And on top of that, I have watched healthcare workers being underpaid for 5 or more decades. And then I have noticed that many of our workers, and especially many workers, women, especially women of color, have been mistreated. Now, I don't hear enough but a few women clapping. All you women ought to be clapping.
Get it right, get it right, get it right.
Now this right here gonna make you clap. We're getting little crumbs for our hard work we do. I said little crumbs. They don't even want to even pay us for our worth. And we don't even have decision-making power to create safe working conditions. And it is time for a change. How many of y'all agree that it's time for a change?
Time for a change.
It's time for a change to be made. So this is why that workers are coming together across North Carolina. And we are organizing side by side with fast food workers. Did you hear what I said? We are organizing side by side with fast food workers. And we may have different jobs, but all our work is hard work. Oh, okay, look. So we are demanding a 15 minimum.
Let's give it up. Let's give it up for Fight for 15. And a union.
Come on, give it up for workers. Give it up for essential workers right now. All right, y'all. We're getting ready to hear from Erica Ihime from Jobs to Move America, Alabama Coalition for Community Benefits, along with Randy Weigarten from American Federation of Teachers, and Tega Tony from AFT West Virginia. Put your hands together as they speak.
Hello, from Birmingham, Alabama. More and more manufacturing corporations are moving here to the South. They're taking root right on top of old Jim Crow, including so-called green industries like electric transportation that still include low wages and poor working conditions. In order to break the old system here in the South, we must join labor and community together in a real way, like we're doing in our campaign to win community benefits with the Canadian bus manufacturer New Flyer right in Anniston, Alabama. Just recently, our Alabama Coalition for Community Benefits also worked to support the efforts of the Amazon Workers Campaign here in Alabama. As most of you may know, the election did not have the outcome that we hoped for, but we took away some valuable lessons. One, community has to join together with labor for us to be successful. Two, laws to protect the workers must be strengthened to stop employer interference. And three, but most importantly, this struggle is just not one campaign. It is a long game that requires deep investment into this movement, community and worker education, and a high level of coordination to build up and activate an infrastructure here in the South that is laser focused on breaking the system of poverty and worker oppression. That is why we must have a third Reconstruction in this country, and this time, get it right. This is how we create job accessibility, a good job for the underemployed and underrepresented workers, which will ultimately break the chains of poverty for Southern workers and ultimately all workers here in America. Thank you.
All right, everybody, come on, make some noise one time. Oh, come on, let me hear you get a little louder than that. Make some noise. If you happy to be out here, make some noise. If you joining, if you know somebody, show some love to the people joining online. Everybody in person, show some love to the people joining on live. And just lift up one big shout of praise to them one time. All right, y'all. Now we're going to be speaking about changing the narrative, y'all. Somebody say changing the narrative.
Changing the narrative.
Say changing the narrative.
Changing the narrative.
So for us to change the narrative, I need all of us, everybody that's out here right now, and everybody that's viewing online, I need us to go to the thirdreconstruction.org. Somebody say third. Say third. Reconstruction. Reconstruction.org. And we're going to educate ourselves. We're going to sign up and we're going to get involved, because that is one step that we're going to do in changing the narrative. Are y'all with me?
Yes.
If y'all with me, make some noise. Part of changing the narrative is we want to know, why do we need a Poor People's Campaign National Call for Moral Revival? Why do we need it? So to come up and speak on that, I need y'all to make some noise from the Groundwork Project. Make some noise for Joe Kennedy. We'll have Joe Kennedy, and after that we'll have Al McShirley and Elliot Smith coming on up.
Hey, Joe.
How are you guys?
Doing good.
Good, good. Thank you so much for letting me join you tonight. I am so honored to be with you. My time is limited here, and I've been asked to talk briefly about why we need a Poor People's Campaign at this moment. And I can tell folks that there is no way that I can be more powerful or more eloquent or more on point than all of the speakers that we have had so far over the course of this program. To listen to the truth that they spoke, to be part of this program, to know that we need a Poor People's Campaign because we need a third Reconstruction in this country. We need a Poor People's Campaign because we need a moral revival in this country. We need a Poor People's Campaign because every person across this country deserves to be seen, deserves to be heard, deserves to be able to live in dignity and care for their families and earn a living wage, and deserves to have a country respect them with the same dignity and grace and care that they put into it every single day. And that is all that a Poor People's Campaign is asking for that recognition, for that dignity, for the ability to fight for a better future for every single one of our citizens. And a big and bold and brave country should be able to guarantee every single one of us that. It is in fact literally in the words of a founding document that only applied to a very select few. But our history has been about expanding that view because people have fought for it, fought to expand, fought to embrace all of us. And that is what a Poor People's Campaign does. I am so honored to be with you and to call myself an ally. And I am so grateful to be sharing this moment with all of you, and sharing this space with all of the speakers. All right. Thank you so much, and keep fighting.
All right, everybody, if you want, can we give it up for our MCs? Keith and Kaz, KK. We're going to go now to Randy Weingarten from AFT. Randy, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So, forward together, not one step back. Forward together,
not one step back.
Forward together,
not one step back.
See, we can do call and repeat from Zoom. So that is part of who we all are. Nation to nation, sea to sea. You're in Raleigh, I'm in New York City today. But together we walk and we fight for people who have been on the stage already, because they know what the stakes are right now. Why is it in this country that the billionaires during COVID struck gold, and the people who worked every single day, manning the grocery stores, doing what Kumi Davis did, helping people in assisted living, helping people who are getting old and need the help, people like Tika Tony, who was in school every day helping children, All these people who are frontline providers, people who are in nursing homes, people who are doctors, people who are nurses, how come they can't make ends meet when the billionaires made a ripoff out of this country? This is why we need a third Reconstruction, because we need the power that all of us together, community and labor, bring. We need the power to fight for a minimum wage. We need the power to fight for labor rights. We need the power to fight for voting rights. We need the power to fight for all of these things. Last thing I will say is this. A. Philip Randolph, one of the iconic leaders of labor, said the following: at the banquet table of nature, there are no received seats. You get what you can take and you keep what you hold. If you can't take anything, you won't get anything. If you can't hold anything, you won't keep anything. And you can't take anything without organization. That is what a third Reconstruction is about. And with that, let me introduce one of our activists.
If you would come up quickly,
Tony.
and then we will go into a...
Thank you, Randy. Thank you, Randy. I appreciate it so much. And I'm always so grateful for all the work you're doing for our union and for our country. And it is so good and refreshing to hear from our brothers and sisters in this fight around the country. When we work together, mobilize together, and rise together, we become advocates for all those who need advocacy. We become a voice for the voiceless, and we become an agent of change in a time where great change is needed. You know, I've lived my whole life in Southern West Virginia. I've watched my family, my friends, and my neighbors fight, struggle, and claw to eke out an existence. In a country where we are so prosperous, so wealthy, and so advantaged, there is no reason, no excuse for widespread poverty. There's also no reason and no excuse for us to stand by any longer and let this great injustice continue to take root in our country and strangle the potential of this nation and its people. We are at a crossroads, a great intersection of moral fortitude. The magnificent ideals and values America was founded on have been manipulated and twisted by greed and corruption. We need a third Reconstruction, a movement to address poverty in a meaningful way, to fight for a living wage, to bring a federal jobs program, the likes of which we haven't seen since FDR. We need a movement that centers healthcare as a right instead of a privilege, to confront and address systemic racism head on, and to preserve and defend the integrity of our elections, and also that recognizes that workers do have a right to form and join unions. We need a movement to elevate the power of the people. We've been put here for this time and this purpose and this season, and it is up to us to push for change, to right these egregious wrongs. Am I going to be each other's keeper? They took me off. Good.
Mothers and fathers to be the moral defibrillators of our time. Hope is here, truth is here, we are the change. Love is here, hope is here, truth is here, we are the change. Love is here, hope is here, truth is here, we are the change. Love is here, hope is here, truth is here, we are the change.
Feels very important to me. See, we need a real, serious conversation in this country, led by those that are most impacted. And I love this question of, does the Bible say anything about what nations, what Caesars are supposed to do? Because Matthew 25 says, I was hungry to the nations. not to a church, not to a charity, not to an individual. I was hungry, and what did your nation do?
Third Reconstruction, a moral revolution. Together we can be the hope and the solution. Third Reconstruction, expand democracy, a moral revolution. Reconstruction breaks us free. Third Reconstruction, a moral revolution. Together we can be the hope and the solution. Third Reconstruction, expand democracy, a moral revolution. Reconstruction breaks us free. Cause when we all get together, when we get love together, and equality together, and humanity together, when we all get together, what a day! What a day! What a day of justice! All get together. What a day of justice that will be. When we all get together. What a day of justice that will be. When we all get together. What a day of justice that will be. When we all get together. What a day. Love is here, hope is here, truth is here, we are the change. Love is here, hope is here, truth is here, we are the change. When we all get together, what a day of justice that will be. When we all get together,
together.
what a day of justice that will be. We all get together. What a day of justice that will be. When we all justice that will be. When we all get together. What a day of justice that will be.
When we
all get together.
What
a day of justice that will be. All get together. What a day of justice that will be. When we all get together. What a day of justice that will be.
Gracious God, we need your help. And we need your power. Grant it to us, Lord, for the work of justice. Hello to all of you in person and the thousands and hundreds of thousands that are online. We have work to do. There's a great scripture honored by Jews and Muslims and Christians, and it reads like this in the Message Bible. When Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem, the Arab, and the rest of our enemies heard that I had rebuilt the wall and that there were no more breaks in it, even though I hadn't yet installed the gates, Sanballat and Geshem sent message, come and meet with us at Capernaum in the valley of Uno, in order to stop the work. They were scheming to hurt me. So I sent messengers back with this message. I'm doing a great work, and I can't come down. Why should the work come to a standstill just so I can come down and see you? In person and all around this nation and world, will you say with me, we have work to do? My job today is to lay out the narrative and the call to action. And after all of the powerful witnesses we have heard here today, I have only one thing left to say. It's a message, it's a simple message, and it's been said before. And that is, if you will bear with me as I'm getting to be a little older country preacher, I will try to say and make live one thing as we launch 365 days, Vicki, of organizing towards an in-person mass poor people's low-wage assembly, national moral march on Washington to build power and change the narrative of this nation. And that one thing is we have work to do for a third Reconstruction to end poverty and low wages from the bottom up. That story I just read you was from Nehemiah, and it was a time when the people were hurting. Things were torn apart, injustice was real. And they had had a first construction. They had even had a second reconstruction, but they needed one more. And many of the people laughed at Nehemiah, Liz, and said it wouldn't make a difference. But Nehemiah went out at night, Nehemiah did, and surveyed the condition of the people, and even though he was doing well, he came to the conclusion that it would be better to die reconstructing the nation than to just live and let it be as it was. Nehemiah said, I'm doing the work, and I can't come down. I'm doing a great work. We have work to do. And the determination of Nehemiah the builder is a lesson I've learned from two of my heroes. The first one is Frederick Douglass. After the Dred Scott decision of the Supreme Court, when members of the Supreme Court were actively members of the KKK, and many had been appointed that should not have ever been appointed. And they ruled that black folk had no rights, that white people ever had to listen to, and the Dred Scott decision made it seem like all was lost. Nothing was possible anymore. That an impenetrable wall of injustice had been built by those in power, and decades of consistent efforts had done nothing to reconstruct it. In fact, things had only gotten worse. Don't you ever think that a Trump experience is our first Trump experience. Now, Douglas did not diminish, you don't lie, he did not diminish Anna the evil or the states' rights. He did not diminish what had happened. He actually declared that it was monstrous, that it was deceptive, deadly, and devious. But then after saying very clearly how bad it was, he said there's another side. And there is the side that says we cannot shrink from the work that must be done. And so in the face of increased attacks against humanity, the humanity of enslaved people, Douglas said, listen, the very attempt to blot out forever the hopes of an enslaved people may be one necessary link in the chain of events preparatory to the downfall and complete overthrow of the whole slave system. What if what they have done is their undoing? He said the whole history of the anti-slavery movement is studied with proof that all measures devised and executed with a view to ally and diminish the anti-slavery agitation has only served to increase, intensify, and embolden that agitation. They may have the Supreme Court of the nation, but they don't have the Supreme Court of the universe. And so Frederick Douglass was in essence was saying, we have work to do. But this is also a lesson that I learned from my second hero, my greatest hero, whom I buried 33 years ago today on the summer solstice in 1988, your grandfather, William. And though he had already had a stroke, my father was still working for justice. He died in the morning after he had been out in the community organizing on behalf of poor people in eastern North Carolina. No cameras, not because the newspaper was there, because he believed one day he would have to face the God of the universe. And he taught me that some things are so important that you work your whole life on their behalf. My greatest hero knew that no matter who we are, we have work to do. Especially when so many things are working to the contrary of what we know is right. I want to be like Frederick Douglass and be real honest today, yes. In the state houses of some of the poorest states in the nation, we see racist voter suppression, and the same politicians who support voter suppression use their power once they get elected to deny health care and deny living wages and deny LGBTQ rights. And yes, they mean to take us backwards. Yes, they deny the climate crisis and block the bold action that is needed to transition to renewable energy. Yes, they are serious about supporting unchecked military spending while calling for austerity and tax cuts and defunding of anti-poverty programs. Yes, it seems like they work overtime to build walls of justice rather than pathways to equality. Yes, we know what they are doing. But the question is, what are we going to do? And I declare with every breath in my body, we have work to do. We are in a time when the UN Special Rapporteur, who acts as the watchdog of extreme poverty around the world, had to issue a withering critique of the state of America today. He said the policies are steering the country toward a dramatic change of direction that is rewarding the rich and punishing the poor by blocking access to even the most meager necessities. Yes, we are living in a time when Joseph Stiglitz said the cost to keep people in poverty is greater than the cost to release people from poverty, and yet we keep paying the wrong cost. And in light of this, the real issue now is not what they have done, but what we will decide to do, and that there is work to be done. Now, we live in a time when we have two glaring political problems that have always existed in this country, and they are represented in the mindset of Mitch McConnell and Joe Manchin. The one political problem we have, Mitch McConnell is a metaphor of meanness, and his obstructionist caucus. They're not just bad politicians, they're just mean as hell. Money has hardened their hearts. They are arrogant and aggressive. They don't intend to establish justice. They lied when they put their hands on the Constitution and swore to uphold it. And they make no secret about it. But on the other hand, we have the problem of manipulations represented by Senator Joe Manchin. And he is a metaphor for those who claim to be moderate. But there ain't no such thing as moderation when it comes to the establishment of justice. The Constitution doesn't say establish justice moderately. The Constitution doesn't say provide for the common defense moderately. The Constitution doesn't say promote the general welfare moderately. The Constitution doesn't say ensure domestic tranquility moderately. The Constitution doesn't say equal protection under the law moderately. Moderate is something we call in Christian language as being lukewarm. And the Lord says everything that's lukewarm, he spews it, vomits it out of his mouth. To claim to be a moderate on constitutional issues like voting rights is a cover for being in the pocket of the wealthy, but you ain't as mean as McConnell to be that honest. And so you hide. You can't compromise with people who don't come believing in the same promise. Compromise means to come with the promise. But if you don't even believe there's a voting problem, you can't compromise with them. If they don't believe there's a poverty problem, you can't compromise with them because they're not working on the same issues that you're working for. And I learned a long time ago in Aesop's fables that even if a fox tells you he won't bite you, don't you believe it? The problem we have in our public life also didn't begin with Donald Trump, but it began with the white Southern strategists. And they saw the seats of power were becoming more diverse. And so 50 years ago, they looked at the expansion of our democracy, won by the second Reconstruction. They saw women and black people and progressive whites and Latinos and indigenous people would increasingly be elected to office. And the people didn't look like them. And so politics was going to change from the good old boys club of gamemanship to a struggle for democracy. You see, in the old system, compromise was the order of the day because wasn't nobody there but white men. So whichever side you were on, you knew nothing was going to fundamentally change. So you could give a little and take a little in the old boys club. You could slap one another on the backs and then go to night and share drinks that evening because the policies weren't going to hurt you anyway. You were still going to be a millionaire. So here we are. And our democracy itself is in a strange time. It's on a spiral toward death. Compromise is keeping us from addressing issues that cause people to die. The rules of the good old boys club don't apply anymore. When the good old boys are fighting like hell to hold on to the keys to the club and the club itself. Now facing this, Liz, somebody told me to give you and Nelson and Joyce and Alvin and Dr. Forbes a message the other day. They told me to tell y'all to stop offering people hope. They said, why would you have a poor people's campaign and offer people hope? And I said, you don't know what hope is. Hope is not a pipe dream. Hope is when you decide a lie will not work harder than your truth. Hope is when you decide hate will not be stronger than your love. That meanness will not be stronger than your mercy. That injustice will not be stronger than your justice. Jürgen Moltmann once said, faith, wherever it develops into hope, causes not rest but unrest, not patience but impatience. Real hope does not calm the unquiet heart, but itself is an unquieted heart in man. And those who hope in God can no longer put up with reality as it is, and they are willing to suffer underneath it in order to change it. So in times like these, we've got work to do. W.B. Du Bois said a reconstruction, even that T, is not just about changing laws, but it's also about changing the mindset of the people who have lived under injustice. Du Bois taught us that a nation doing the work of reconstruction, the people must realize that they are not just people to be acted upon, but they are people who can act and change things. We can take the Constitution and snatch it away from the obstructionists of the good old boys club. We can lay claims to its claims and promises and make them come alive. Reconstruction begins when we change our mentality and say, it's time for you to get your foot off of my neck. And when this happens, we develop a loving militancy in our movement. A loving militancy that says we will not allow anything less than what is promised. And this is not new. Let me show you. In the Declaration of Independence, it says that wherever there has been a long train of abuses, the people must go to work. Let me show you. It says, but when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, inventions are designed to reduce them under absolute despotism. It is their right, it is their duty of the people to throw off such government and provide new guards for their future security. And the truth is, when it comes to poverty and racism and ecological devastation and denial of health care and the war economy and the false distorted moral narrative of religious nationalism, there's been a long train of abuses. Even before the pandemic, there were 140 million Americans poor and low wealth and 250,000 dying a year. There's been a long train of abuses. When corporations use the shock doctrine to scare the nation in a crisis, to give them more money while essential workers are risking everything they can to keep the country alive, while they were the first to go to work and the first to get sick and the first to go to the hospital and the first to die. And those people that are essential workers don't even make a living wage. That's a long train of abuses. As long as the greedy corporate elites and the ruling aristocracy act as though they can chew workers up and spit them out when they get ready, that's a long train of abuse. When the same communities that were enslaved and segregated by Jim Crow are now targeted for predatory lending and over-policing and violent murder by police and environmental racism and mass incarceration, it's been a long train. Same forces that push voter suppression have increased their efforts to abridge the right to vote. And they get applauded by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce when they undermine the United States Constitution. It's been a long train. When the sacred lands of our indigenous Indian siblings, the land that their ancestors died protecting, are being sold off to pipelines and copper mines, it's been a long train of abuses. When this so-called nation of immigrants that stole Texas and California and New Mexico from Mexico then want to treat Mexicans like they aren't Americans too, from South America. And they don't even want to offer asylum seekers. And they want to put up walls and snatch children. It's been a long train of abuses. When we continue to waste billions on the machinery of war, while veterans live on food stamps, it's been a long train of abuses. When we've seen religious nationalism used to prop up greed and prop up and sanctify wrong and perpetrate outright lies, it's been a long train of abuses. When we go through a pandemic, Nelson, and the billionaires make $2 trillion more dollars during the pandemic, and 8 million more people fall into poverty, and we got to fight like hell for a living wage and health care and still don't have it. It's been a long train. And the truth of the matter is, only poor and low-wealth people and their moral allies have the legitimate contractor's license to reconstruct America. If I might turn back to my biblical text for a moment, Nehemiah came from among those who had faced injustice. He himself had been in exile, and he had the moral authority then, and therefore, to rebuild society. In the songbook of ancient Israel that is honored by Muslim, Jews, and Christians, The psalmist once declared, the stone that the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone, and this is the Lord's doing. The truth is, it has always taken the rejected to do the work of rebuilding society. Y'all don't hear me. It took the slaves and their moral allies to bring about the first Reconstruction. It took the stones that had been rejected by Jim Crow, like Rosa Parks and Fannie Lou Hamer and Viola Lewusa, to call this nation to the work of a second Reconstruction. It took the miners and people like Mother Jones and Ann Braden to work on this nation and challenge their bosses' greed and being prioritized over people's needs. It took the poor miners to ask the question, which side are you on, my brother? And so now, we have the moral contractor's license to reconstruct the nation. And that's why we're gathered here. That's why we're gathered all over the nation. It's why we're launching 365 days of mobilizing and organizing. It's why we're building power among poor and low-wealth voters. It's past time to go to work. Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, it's time to go to work. We've got work to do. We've got to cause this nation to recognize that since the United States is the wealthiest nation in the world, indeed in all of history, it is a moral abomination that there are 140 million poor and low-wealth people in this country. It's time to go to work. We got to make ending poverty a legislative top priority. It's time to go to work. It's time to ensure protection for frontline essential workers and guaranteed income, expansion of unemployment insurance. We've got to guarantee that SNAP and WIC and child tax credits and earned income tax credits and moratoriums on evictions are all made permanent, and that they include undocumented people. It's time to go to work. We've been talking about health care for all since the 1912. It's time to go to work. It's time to update the poverty measurement so we truly measure poverty like it should be. It's time to go to work. It's time to guarantee housing for everybody that's safe. It's time to guarantee the right water and end water and utilities shut off. It's time for an infrastructure plan and a federal jobs plan that goes into poor and low-income communities and lift from the bottom up. It's time to go to work. It's time not only to protect voting rights, but to expand voting rights. And I wish somebody would shout with me, and no compromise. It's time. It's time to ensure all the rights of indigenous people and tribal nations, including the right to the free expression of their religion and the right to their native land. It's time to embrace a bold agenda to transform the economy away from climate chaos to a green renewable energy economy that prioritizes the poor and low-income communities. It's time to go to work, y'all. It's time to demilitarize U.S. foreign policy. And it's time to cut the military budget right now 10% and take all of those monies and put them in health care and education and green infrastructure and jobs and anti-poverty programs. And then we need to cut it again. It's time to end unjust mass incarceration and violent policing. And it's time to enact fair taxes on corporations and repeal the 2017 tax cuts and stop letting the rich get away with murder while the poor people die. It's time. And as I prepare to close, if I could borrow from Martin Luther King today, who was a contemporary of my father, anybody who tries to criticize these demands and say that they are somehow un-American or anti-American, let me paraphrase. If our demands are wrong, then the Constitution is wrong. If our demands are wrong, then the promise of equal protection under the law is a lie. If our demands are wrong, then we might as well tear up the Declaration of Independence and the promise for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If our demands are wrong, then the Bible is wrong. When it says, woe unto those who legislate evil and rob the poor of their rights. If our demands are wrong, then someone ought to have the courage to say Jesus was wrong. When he said all nations will be judged by how they treat the least of thee. When I was hungry, did you feed me? When I was naked, did you clothe me? When I was a stranger, did you invite me in? If our demands are wrong, then the call to be repairs of the breach should have never been placed in the Bible. But the truth is, our call is not wrong. Our call is right, and not only is right, is the only thing worth spending your lives for. Because if we don't do this work, I fear for this nation. You can't have the levels of injustice that exist now in poverty and racism and think this nation is built on a solid foundation. You can't have the line of pain we're seeing and think you're going to always have rest and so-called peace. And the issue is not the scarcity of money. It's not the scarcity of ideas. The only issue is the scarcity of moral consciousness. And the only way to change that is for us to realize, touch your neighbor and say, we've got work to do. And we're going to do it, right? We've got to do it, right? Because we refuse to give up on America. It's time, Roz Pellis, for a third Reconstruction. It's time to give everything we have to deconstruct the interlocking injustices that are all around us. If you got gray hair, suit up one more time. If you're middle-aged, pay your debt for living on somebody else's sacrifices. And if you're young, get your young hind parts out here, because it's time. Oh, I feel like preaching now. When Habitat for Humanities wants to put up some houses really quick, they have a blitz build. They put out the call and say, we need everybody, all hands on deck to get this work done. Well, I believe it's time to blitz build America. We need a blitz third Reconstruction. Everything we enjoy today, everything we have today is because people worked for it in the past. They said abolition was a pipe dream. They said the 40-hour week was a fantasy. They said the right for women and African Americans to vote was wishful thinking. But then somebody went to work. Have mercy, Jesus. Tell your neighbor, say, neighbor, we must make them see us. We must make them hear us. We must, and we can't settle because we know what is right. Let me tell the organ man. Now, if you're going to play with a Pentecostal, play with him, or leave him alone. We've got work to do. Don't be all into speaking. You play when I'm not speaking. I was in West Virginia lately, and I learned about Ralph Chaplin, who was tutored by Mother Jones. He sat under the influence of that great sojourner, and he heard Mother Jones say, you fight until hell freezes over, and then you fight on the ice. Y'all hear what I'm saying? And then Ralph Chaplin wrote a song. Sojourner Forever. You gonna play with me? He wrote a song called Sojourner Forever. And the song said, in our hands is placed the power greater than the hoarded gold, greater than the might of armies, magnified 1,000-fold. We can bring to birth a new world from the ashes of the old, for the union makes us strong. And I stopped by to tell you, our unity makes us strong. Together We got work to do. Together, the rejection gotta work. Together, we can change the world until the poor are lifted, the workers are paid, the sick are healed, the vote is not suppressed, police killing is stopped, land and water is not poisoned, war is not pushed, promoted and promulgated, humanity is respected, children are protected, civil rights, labor rights, human rights are never neglected until these things are actualized. We've got work to do. And if we do it together, if the rejected work together, generations yet unborn will rise up and remember us for the work we did. And together, we will change the nation. I feel like going to my pulpit down in Greenville. I hear an old gospel song. I've been running for Jesus a long time, and I ain't tired yet. But since there is no separation between Jesus and justice, let me say it like this. I've been running for justice a long time, and I ain't tired yet. Because when it's all over, when the work is done, if we work together, love wins. If we work together, truth wins. If we work together, hope wins. And what a day, what a day, what a day of rejoicing it will be. Been working for justice a long time, and I ain't tired yet. When we have it, what a day, what a day, what a day, what a day.
One, two.
I'm not tired, I'm not tired, I'm not